I get paid more than a surgeon. It's ridiculous. But I work my tail off. I work 70, 80 hours a week sometimes. Sometimes I work 40. But the thing is, over communicate, over deliver.
Agent Power Huddle is a daily jumpstart, giving you all the tools you need to create an amazing real estate career. Led by top experts in the field, you'll learn how to sell more houses in less time while creating the life you want. Welcome to the Agent Power Huddle.
Good morning, everyone. How's it going? Kind of a small group right now. Is it because it's Good Friday? That's kind of weird, but it's fine. We're here. These are the diehards. Let's do this. Okay, so we are here today because we have a super, super special guest. Well, we're here because we're here every Friday, but today we're lucky to have a super special guest join us. We've been bringing a lot of guest speakers on just because, I can teach all day, every day, but, I know you don't want to hear me talk all the time. So today I want to introduce you to Kim Fraser. So here's the deal, you guys, here's basically who Kim is. Okay. I'll tell you in Kim's words, but also tell you in mine. So when I first got into real estate, one of the names that I would see all over the place is Kim Fraser. And I was like, man, how does she do? Who is this Kim Fraser? How does she do this? I'm driving around my area. I'm like Pierce County area, Washington, like Lake Taps. And every road I'm on, I see her name. I'm in Puyallup. I see her name. I'm like, how is she doing this? I was like, one day I want to be like this Kim Fraser. I want my name to be seen everywhere. I don't know how she's doing it. But fast forward a few years, she and I ran into each other at an EXP conference, just kind of out of the blue. And it turned out that she was getting my mailers because I was doing farming and Kim was getting my mailers. And she walks up to me. She's like, hi, Lynea. And I was like, oh my gosh, Kim Fraser knows who I am. And lo and behold, we've developed this kind of friendship, this mentorship over the last couple of years. And I'm really happy that she decided to be here today because one of the things is that she's been in real estate for 22 years. And I know a lot of you also have been. I have not, so I can't relate to that. But she's been in real estate for 22 years. But for 19 of those years, she's been in the top 1% of agents nationwide. So to get in the top 1% alone is really challenging, but to keep it for 19 years in a row, there's something special there. So we are really lucky to have her here. She's going to talk with us like how to make luxury listings move in today's market. Because I know quite a few of us on here have some luxury listings right now that aren't moving. I can look at like 4 of you right now. And I was like, who else can help us with this? I don't know how to help you because it's not my market. So Kim's here and she's going to share probably some other strategies as well. And so with no further ado, Kim.
Thank you, Lynea. You are so wonderful. Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here today. It was so fun when I saw Lynea at that EXP event. I didn't see her mailers and she had some really short marketing pieces coming in my mail on the lake. And I was like, nice, well done. And then I'm like, oh gosh, I've got to step up my game. So just like all of us, whenever someone enters the market or, they're starting to send stuff out, it makes you kind of up your game a little bit. And Lynnea's got sharp pieces. Not all agents' pieces that come through the mail are as sharp as Lynea. So that's to your credit. So I saw her little shiny face and I was like, oh my gosh, there's Lynea. So I thought I would go over and introduce myself and say, hey, I get a little same market. I get your information and you're doing a great job. And we met up and became friends. And she's a rock star. So you guys are super lucky to be able to be mentored by her every Friday. She's smart, witty, hardworking, just a really great agent. So I'm honored to be here. So thank you for having me on the show. So a little bit about me. I am a mom of 6, grandma of 9. I got my real estate license 22, almost 23 years ago. I'm native to Washington. I'm also licensed in Texas and Arizona. So I got my license in those 2 states, Arizona this last year and Texas about 2.5 years ago, which is what perpetuated my move to EXP. I was formerly at a brokerage, John L. Scott, for 19 years. I was the number 1 agent in the company the last 2 years that I was there before making the move. So they were not super happy to see me leave to EXP, but I love it. Best decision I've ever made. I just love the collaboration and that you're never the smartest person in the room. There's always someone doing more than you are. So it always pushes you to do more, which was important to me because once you hit that top 1% or top agent in the company, I feel like there's not a lot of motivation, and I'm the type of person that you need something to chase, right? So I entered the luxury market probably, I would say, in 2004. I got my license in the middle of 2002. In 2004, I had my first luxury listing. It was $1.8 million, which is a lot of money today, but it was a lot of money back then. That was the highest sold ever on Lake Taps for an actual resale property. So I was like, oh my gosh. And my other price points at that point were like $235, $250. So average price point in the area is $235, $250. I have a $1.8 million listing. Nobody can afford that. Rates are probably 6% at the time. So we went ahead and started marketing it. And I thought, gosh, if I'm given this opportunity, I am not going to squander it. Like, I'm going to take full advantage of this opportunity to leverage this, because there were a few agents in the market that have been selling for a few years longer than me that kind of dominated the lake. And I thought, gosh, if I wanted to, and I lived on the lake at that point, I just moved onto the lake. And if I wanted to dominate that market, I really leveraged this listing. So really, you want to take any listing opportunity you have and leverage it. And so how I got my first luxury listing, that couple, I sold their house for $200,000 about 2 years before. It was one of my first listings. And it was referred. So my next door neighbor referred me to a coworker at Wells Fargo. And that person referred me to their neighbor, who ended up being the Hamiltons. And I sold their house for $200,000. And they were building on the lake this beautiful 5,400, 5,600 square foot home. Well, they ended up getting a divorce. So why wouldn't they call me? Because I did a good job on their $200,000 house. So why wouldn't you call that girl that did a good job with the $200,000 house to sell her $1.6 million? It was actually listed at 1.8. I think we closed at 1.6. And it was just really a big jump for me, right? And so there's that saying, fake it till you make it. There's some truth in that. Now, you're not going to want to bolster anything more than you are, but I'm not offering up like, oh, by the way, this is my first $1 million listing. Like, I'm keeping it completely on the down low. And their neighbor's house was actually my first listing ever. So within 6 months, I'm selling the neighbor's house that was referred by my next door neighbor. And then a few months later, I'm selling their house because we're maybe not taps. A couple years later, I'm at this $1.8 million listing. So that's how I got my first listing, was from my $200,000 average price point listing back in 2002. So don't discount your, entry level listings. You never know what they're going to bring you. Actually, that was probably middle of the road at that point. You never know what they're going to bring down the road. So from that, we decided, gosh, we need to take advantage of this and start marketing to the lake, marketing to the area. So we were doing flyers, postcards, newsletters, all those types of things. So from the lake, we started a newsletter campaign to generate more activity. We would do like just listed, just sold, all that kind of stuff. And we'd send out an article every week. And you have to think back, there was really no internet presence at this time. So we didn't have Facebook. There was no Instagram. There was no LinkedIn. There's nothing. There's zero social media. I mean, we're like 4 or 5 years into real estate being on the web. Like, I remember in 1998, I was dating a guy, and I would go to his house, and I'm like, okay, now how do I get on the internet again? Like, what do I do? He's like, push the blue E. You have to push the blue E. I'm like, okay. So I go over to visit him the next weekend. I'm like, what do I push again? He's like, the blue E. You got to push that blue E in the bottom. I'm like, okay, World Wide Web. Okay, here I go. So I jumped in on AOL and now you're 6 years later and you're trying to figure out how to market luxury listings. So a lot of our information, there was no luxury home magazine. So I marketed in like Homes and Land, Harmon Homes, the real estate book, like all of those real estate books. And I would just try to get my name out there wherever I could. I'd have double page spreads. I had a lender back in the day that would share that with me, because I'm just like, I just need to get out there as much as I can so people will recognize me. I go to a listing appointment. I'm like, boom, 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 boom. I can have your house in all of these. No one else has that opportunity. So that just kind of grew from there. And then I got my next luxury listing. And my next luxury listing, I wanted to, hey, Lynea, can you do a screen share with me really fast?
Oh, you need screen share. Let me see. Yes, I can make you available. 1 second here. Oh, you got it.
Okay, perfect. So I wanted to go in here and kind of share with you guys a little bit of the journey. So I'm going to go in here. I just did a search this morning for properties over $1 million. So I've sold 152 properties over $1 million. I think I've sold about 1,225 properties in my career. About 750 or 800 million in actual volume. So that I think I've averaged last 5 years, 60 million on average. Last year, I did about 37 million, 50 million, 82 million, 76 million, 67, 62, 64. So I usually have around 50 to 70 million in volume. Last year was a down year for me. My son broke both of his feet and was in a wheelchair for 3 months. So I had to move to Arizona for 3 months to care for him. So I pretty much didn't work like third quarter of last year. and then kind of have to ramp up again. So this is just a kind of a sampling, and we'll kind of see when these things started hitting. This is just kind of, let's see, stat state. Okay, so this is, it was 1575 is what it closed out at. It was 221 days on market. So it was June 19th of 2005. So I was off a year. So I'd been an agent 3 years at this point when it closed. So we'll just kind of take a peek at this really quickly. So that listing right there, and myself and one other agent, we kind of share the record. He might be about five listings ahead of me right now, but I have about 15 properties coming on over $1 million. So I'll catch back up again. But myself and one other guy, Michael Morrison, kind of share the record for $1 million home sales in Pierce County, in the whole county that we live in. And he does a lot over in the Tacoma University Place area, and I do a lot more East Pierce. So this was the first listing that I had that sold for 1575. Beautiful home, just very stunning. So back then we tried to always have like a little bit better marketing, a little bit better photography than the average agent, a little bit better flyers. This is my second one that I listed. 6,600 square feet. That was about 5 months later, listed at 1,265. So you can see prices were, adjusting. They weren't getting full price. Then in 06, I listed for 1,400, sold for 1,325. And then 06 listed for 1,275, listed for 1,375, sold 1,275. There's one in 07, and then 09, and then 11, and then 12, and then 14, and then 15, and then 15. So this one right here, you guys, my first Bellevue listing. So Bellevue is east of Seattle, for those of you that aren't familiar with it. These young kids called me, and I was working at the John L. Scott office in Bellevue at that point, because I was kind of dominating the market that I lived in. And these are just over $1 million. Like I have a lot of properties that I sold for 900 to $1 million that are worth like 1.5 to 2 million now. But I'm literally just doing a sold price of 1 million even and above in this example. So this couple right here came from a realtor.com ad. So I get a realtor.com call, and it sold for 2.348 million. I go to meet them. They're literally like in their mid-20s. I'm like, hi, how are you? I meet them in Kirkland, show them a house. I'm like, so what do you guys do for work? Like never prejudge someone and be like, I'm not going to work with you. And he's like, oh, I work for my parents' company, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, so, how is it that you guys are affording a $2.3 million house? You're so young. And they said, oh, my mom's going to buy it, and then we're just going to rent it from her. I was like, okay, cool. So this listing right here, I sold 2.5 years ago for 4.3 million. I resold it, double-ended it in an open house. From that, I sold 8 other properties totaling $15 million from that one couple. The least expensive house I did was 1.5 up to 4.3 million, 2.8, 2.3, 2.8, 1.7, 2.3, 2.6, all from this realtor.com phone call that I took with a couple kids in their mid-20s in Kirkland. So you just never know where something's going to turn out. This was a neighborhood that I was marketing to. So the lake stuff up here are all like, that was a neighbor of mine. This was through realtor.com, also $1.1 million listing. I guess that was my second $1 million listing in Bellevue. That was my first one. Represented the buyer on both of those. But a lot of these came from my farming and from my marketing. So like Lynea was farming my neighborhood. I used to also I still do farm my neighborhood. So that's kind of how we did that. This is the young couple who I sold the $2.4 million house. I sold theirs for 1.3. So you just start building on these. Here's a builder that hired me to sell a couple on the lake. And then they just you gain momentum. This was from my farming, 1.5. This is from farming, 1 million one. This is from farming. This is from farming, 1.6, 1.9. Now I'm selling these guys, I'm selling their house for 4.5 million. They sold this house in 16 for a house that they were building on Lake Sammamish. Now I'm selling that house for 4.5 million.
Sam, can I ask a couple of questions
Yes.
real quick? Because you said a couple of things that I think are really, really inspiring. So you didn't only do it in one market, but you've done it in multiple markets.
Yes.
And what I'm hearing is you did it without all the tools and technology that we have today. There was a lot of old school stuff in there, right? Like I like to call it old school.
Yeah, and print material.
Yeah, it's all print material, but there's a lot of farming, like tons and tons of farming. So do you mind sharing kind of like a little bit of that farming strategy?
No, absolutely.
Like, how did you choose who to farm? Like, did your listings, because I saw you had one that was sitting for like 258 days.
Mm-hmm.
Sell because of farming. Like what were some of those?
Different markets. So if you go back, like some markets, so you have to remember, I got my license in 02. 07, 08, 09, 10, 11, you didn't want listings. 08 to 11, you didn't want listings. Listings sucked. They didn't sell. They were horrible. They took forever to sell. You wanted buyers. So anything that you would see back here, like 06, 183 days. Oh, that was, 06 was better. That was like the pinnacle. That was 110 days. This was somebody else's listing, but my buyer came along after 588 days in 2011. I brought along the buyer. That was 2012, 52 days where things were starting to pick up. But you notice a huge gap in $1 million listings between 08, 09. There's like nothing there. You didn't want listings. So they're harder to sell typically. But, they're a lot of times you'll get cash buyers. So the 4.5 that I'm going to list, 60% of the listings in that market are cash. Another listing that I'm going to be selling, I'm listing one, I'm staging it today for $2 million. They found me they had a rental house in the neighborhood that they live in. Their house is worth about $3.5 million. They had a house for $2 million in the neighborhood that they used to live in. I met them at the open house. They called me. I interviewed against two other agents. I'm one of three. The other one's the dominant agent in the market. I'm the second most dominant agent in that market. But I've sold more houses over $2 million than any other agent in that market. So when I lived in the market that I was in, it's kind of pigeonholed. So you've got the lake, which are upper end price points. And then you've got the surrounding area that are probably maybe half to a third of what the lake is. So I knew that if I wanted to do more in the luxury space, I needed to move my office. Because for those of you that are local, my office was at Kent North, John L. Scott. So I was at Lake Tapps for about 18 months, small little office, didn't work for me. Moved to Kent North. I was there for 10 years and was number 1, number 2 agent in the office for 10 years. Great office, great leadership, but it was Kent and it was just not an area that I loved. There's just certain areas that I don't personally love. I sell there, but I don't spend my money marketing there. I won't market to a neighborhood that I won't live in. I wouldn't have lived in as a first-time home buyer. I bought my first house when I was 20, second at 22. I will not market to something that I would not live in. I would not buy it as a first-time home buyer. I wouldn't buy it as an investment. I wouldn't buy it as a move-up buyer, or I wouldn't buy it for retirement. So if I hate the neighborhood, I'm not marketing to it because I can't sell to something that I don't believe in. So number one, when you're picking your farm, you have to pick an area. And even if it's an area that's saturated with like really good agents, as long as they don't have 50% market share, you can kind of hack into that market. But, 20, 30%, I don't need all 100% of a market. If I can get 10 or 15% out of a market, you're doing great. So if you even see a competitor that's, 20, 30%, that means there's 70 or 80% available. So go take the other 20% and leave 50% for the other people. So you don't have to think about, and everybody's not for everybody, right? Like my personality, I'm super outgoing. I'm high energy. I'm definitely competitive. I'm not going to be for everybody, right? And then they're going to also that are very analytical, very detailed, that maybe want somebody who's a little bit more energy. So you're just going to have to figure out who your niche is and who the people are that are going to attract you, and who they're going to want to work with you, and you're going to want to work with them. So I would say don't hesitate to farm an area just because someone else has market share. So I knew I wanted to work the east side. I wanted to do it for like 10 years. But you couldn't do it with the office address where I was at. So I literally physically moved offices after being at the same office for 10 years. I moved same company, but moved to Bellevue about 15, 20 miles away. So I could work the east side because I did not feel like I could represent my brand. I wasn't going to affect the market that I live in because I was already established here and everybody already knew who I was. So regardless of what brokerage I went with or where my office was, it didn't affect me. So moving to Bellevue, it affected whether people would hire me because Bellevue's an upper affluent area and they kind of look their nose down at you. They're like, ooh, where do you live? And so even now when I work Bellevue, like the $2 million listing I had, he asked me where I live. He's like, oh, do you live in the neighborhood? Which can be a problem. And I said, no, I live on Lake Tapps, which is 30 miles south of the neighborhood that I work. So I'm driving 30 miles for these appointments. Today we're staging. I'm driving 30 miles for that appointment. I'm going back 30 miles for that appointment tomorrow. I'm listing a house in North Seattle, which is 50 miles from my house for a client that I sold 7 years ago, 9 years ago. So if you want to work in an area outside of your market, sometimes you're going to have to drive and either remove yourself from your office or be willing to drive further, but you have to kind of establish yourself. Like I have 2 phone numbers. I have a 253 number for my South End and a 425 for the East Side. Because I can't call my East Side clients with a 253. They're like, why are you calling me from Tacoma? I'm like, I'm not in Tacoma. But they don't know. So I have to have a 425 number. So everything that comes in on the MLS goes to my Upper East Side phone number, not my local phone number. So I have 2 different sets of signs. I have 2 different sets of open house signs. I have 2 different cell phones. Not convenient. I have 2 different Facebook pages, so because if they see me, they might be, oh gosh, she's, on the South End, because they kind of look down a little bit at people in the South End. And so not that I'm faking it, I don't lie about where I live, but I live in a very large home on the lake. And so I'm just like, oh, I own an X house on the lake. And they're like, holy crap. And I'm like, exactly. So then when you're going to another market and like the house I live in here is probably 6 million. The house, if this was on Lake Washington, would be 30 or 40 million. And so that also builds credibility. So I'm talking to the guy. He's like, oh my gosh, is your house worth like 10 million? And I said, no, it's about 6. And he's like, that's cool. And I'm like, yeah, it's nice. I'm like, you couldn't find this on Lake Washington. So I use where I live to leverage that, because otherwise they're going to think that I'm like an imposter, but I have to kind of play a part on that a little bit. So some of that in some areas can be a little bit more snooty or a little more uppity. So you want to be true to yourself, but you have to also be able to speak the language. And so that doesn't mean you can't list luxury if you don't live in a multi-million-dollar house. That just means your value proposition and your knowledge needs to be a little bit more scale. When you're on an equal platform, as far as like your home or your lifestyle, I think it's easier to sell, but I wasn't always there, right? Like in the beginning, I did have a waterfront home, my first listing on the water, but it was like $750 is what I paid for it. It was probably worth $1 million at the time when I started working on the lake. But it's, you want to be relevant. I think the biggest thing is people want you to be relatable. They want you to be honest. They want you to be kind. They want you to be genuine. You want to be hardworking. I don't go in and pretend to be somebody that I'm not. Try to be really authentic to yourself is the most important thing, because it's really hard to fake something and people can see through you. And so
that's kind of what we get like from everywhere. And I think it's nice that you're saying that too, is like the thing that we have to remember for everyone on here is that I talk to a lot of agents who are just like, I got to get a deal. I got to get a deal. And the reality is, no, you can be picky. You can choose. That's a great thing about what we do. I mean, you have right now, you have proof in the pudding telling you it's okay. It's okay to be particular. And you also can venture out of where you live too. So I think that's important as well.
Absolutely. Like right now, I have a 1125 listing in Bonnie Lake in Tahale. I have a 335 condo in Issaquah, and I have a 2.25 on Lake Tapps, 176 days on market. These people, she's an agent. I have an agent's house listed. They tried to sell it last year for 2.6, had an offer at 2.35, turned them down, hired me. But now it's stale dated. It's a tough house. It's a big house. It's 6,600 square feet. So not everybody wants that large of a home. And it needs probably $500,000 in updates, maybe 300 to 500.
That's the one with the really colorful, like.
Yes. And it has this bright bulkhead that you're going to die. And so I've tried to convince him during COVID, he painted this mural. And I'm like, you need to paint this out. And he's like, I can't. I'm like, well, you should. So the other thing too, you guys, is I think you have to get comfortable with hard conversations. Okay. So my listing in Tahale, that's 1-2 right here. On my listing in Tahale, beautiful home. I said, I think it's going to be 1 to 1.5. They're like, can we get over 1.2? I said, no. And they said, can we list at 1.2? I said, sure. And I said, market's going to dictate price. So always tell people market dictates price. Don't lose a listing because they're 10% high. If they're willing to come down, or 20% high, if they're willing to work with you, work with that. The other thing too is I would rather have a sign in the yard than no sign in the yard. So if I invest $500 in pictures or $1,000 in pictures, marketing, flyers, and it doesn't sell, that's happened before. We can look at my cancels. Like not everything that I list is going to sell, and you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with not everything selling, because the other thing is, what is that going to leverage? Like, how are you going to be able to leverage that listing? So let's just go properties over $1 million. Let's see how many of those expired and canceled on me. Okay. So not everything's going to sell. It's okay. You want to get a sign in the yard. That's in the last 6 months. I've had one. Let's see. We want my lifetime. So success is not like everything it looks at. They're like, oh, she's so successful. Yeah, I work my tail off. I work my butt off. It's hard work. I show up every single day. I work harder for myself than I would anybody else. Sometimes there's not great work-life balance. And that was hard raising 6 kids, but I would never miss a kid's game. So for you young moms on there, I wouldn't miss any of my kids' games. So not all of these sold. Like these guys ended up moving back into their home. I listed it 3 times. This one didn't sell initially, listed it a year later, sold. This one ended up selling off market with me. This one we had in contract, it fell apart. I brought it back a few years later, sold it. This guy fired me. In vinyl siding, didn't like the fact that I said you had vinyl siding on a lake house. Most houses at $1 million don't have vinyl siding. He thought I was rude. He was actually the rude one, but he was kind of snotty. And I didn't sell it, but someone else did. Kimber sold it. That's my old house. This house did not end up selling. So not everything sells. This house, I sold it to them. Actually, I didn't sell it to them. I listed it, didn't sell it. Grace thought, well, I listed it, sell it years later. So not everything. I've sold this house 3 times. Did not sell it for Southwick. It went into foreclosure. Then the Strongs bought it out of foreclosure. I sold it for the Strongs. Then some people bought it. Then I sold it for them, and then I double ended it. I've had 4 sides of this transaction in like 10 years, 15 years. So the thing is not everything's going to sell, but you're better off having a sign in the yard, right? So you're better off having a sign in the yard. You have open house opportunities. You have marketing opportunities. You've got opportunities to put it on Facebook. You have opportunities to put it on Instagram. You have opportunities to market it. So it's okay. And then you're on there. Hey, I'm doing an open house. I have sold open houses. I sat 8 weekends in a row. Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday. Tomorrow, I'm sitting open houses. I'm not sitting on Easter. But I'm a 22-year veteran, top 20 at EXP last 2 years out of 87,000 agents. I still sit open houses. I sit my own open houses. I go to my own appointments. I'm there on the staging consult. Today, I'm actually going to be loading the U-Haul, helping stage my listing. I'm going to be hands-on. So none of this comes without hard work, right? Now, when it comes to marketing stale listing, typically, if your marketing is great, it's typically going to be price. Rates are 7% today. 7.25%, and bouncing back and forth for jumbos, unless you're with like Wells and they're not mid-6s off and on, right? So it's much harder to sell expensive homes today than it was. I have a 2.25% interest rate on my home locked.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm moving anytime soon? No. If I was to let go of my interest rate, my payment would go up like $8,000 a month.
Yeah, we're doing that. We're doing that right now. We're like, okay, we want to buy on the lake. We want to buy on the lake. Looking at that, it's like, oh my gosh, do we really want to buy on the lake right now? Or can we
just come use my backyard? It's fine. I'm too busy working. I'm not using it. You guys can all come use my backyard. It's fine. I've got a lift.
Beautiful backyard.
Come over. Yeah, come over to my house. You're welcome to use it. But
there's a couple of questions in the chat.
By the way.
Okay. So Darius says where he's from, the average sales price is $150,000. What tips would you give moving into a higher price market, $800,000 plus? Marketing is going into the million. Darius's marketing is going into the $1 million areas.
Okay. What's your highest price point, Darius, that you've ever sold?
Do I see Darius on here?
Upper right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What was the question? I was laughing when you said that my average sale price was $150, and you said, "Wow!" I just started laughing because it's ridiculous. I know
it's hard.
How do you live?
It's your cost of living obviously is less, right? So.
Sorry.
So it's all relative, right, to the market. And I was stupid and bought a huge expensive house 4 years ago, not knowing the market was going to shift again. Everybody always calls me like, I closed on this house and COVID hit the same. I was like, why is everybody wearing masks? I'm like, this is so weird. Like, why is everybody in China wearing masks? Don't get me wrong. 3 weeks later, it all went to crap. In 2007, I bought a $4.5 million house as the market was collapsing. And everybody's like, okay, whenever Kim buys, so when I buy this house, people are like, of course, something crap. The whole market crashed because you bought an expensive house. So it's like the story of my life.
So we can just watch when Kim buys a new expensive house, the market's going to crash.
It's all going to go. So sell everything you have. So it goes bad really quickly. So Darius, so obviously, so what would be considered a luxury price point in your market?
You can get away with it for $500.
So 500 is luxury. What are you getting for 500?
What do you mean? As far as
like
house?
What kind of, how many square feet, quality, all that? I mean, is it something that when you walk in the
I would
door?
put it this way. I would put it this way. Some of the houses, some of those $2 million houses that you showed, where I'm from, those might be going up for like 700.
Yep, absolutely. The other thing too is luxury is not. So you can say, oh, luxury price point $1 million. $1 million dollars on the lake buys you jack now. Like it's disgusting. It's a tear down. It's gross. I go to Bellevue. It's like 1,000 square foot, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1-car garage in 1960. It's horrific. Like you wouldn't even want to live in it. You probably wouldn't even buy it as a rental, honestly, except for the land's worth 800 to $1 million. So it's different depending on what part of the country you're in, right? So I have a condo that is like super high end and expensive because of its location, right? Or you could have a super crappy house in Bellevue or Medina or Seattle that's $1 million, $2 million that you're like, this is disgusting. I would never live in it. So, I would say you have to kind of look at your niche. Like, are you trying to market beautiful homes or are you trying to market a high price point? What's your niche?
Yeah, I'm trying to market higher price points, just the nicer homes.
Do you want beautiful homes or do you just want homes in an expensive area?
It's a good question.
You can't really get those where I'm at. So I guess it would be the Ashtabula, Ohio. So it's outside of Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay. How far is like the area where it's like the nicest homes or nicest community that you could market to? How far away would that be from?
So we have like pockets. So there's a street, Walnut Boulevard, you can market there. And that might get you into like the $500-$600 or $500-$600 without traveling.
Yeah. So what I did, Darius, is I didn't go from like, my first sale was like, I sold a $66,000 house. That's the cheapest house I've ever sold, $66,000. And I sold $4.5 million. Huge gap. My average price point right now this year is 1.1 million is my average price point, right? And not all of them are great. Like some of them are average. But if you go over my whole career, my 22 years last night, it was like 650,000. When I started out, houses were like 130, 150, and now you're in a spot where they're still kind of stuck at that. I went from like 150 to 200, 200 to 250, 250 to 300, 300 to 350. I started marketing and gradually getting a little bit nicer neighborhoods and a little bit more expensive. I just didn't jump in and go from like $150,000 to $1 million marketing. Like you don't usually make that big of a jump, right? Because you have to get your feet.
3, 4, 5s underneath my belt.
Millions?
I mean, no, God, no. 100,000s.
Okay,
so like if I think probably the most expensive listing I've seen is probably about 2.2.
Yeah. Okay. So, and so typically like the buyers at that market, you're going to spend more money on a luxury listing, right? You're going to spend more money because you're going to have drone photography, you're going to have professional photography. You're going to do Matterports, like 3D tours. So you have the floor plan that you can put on your flyer. You're going to do a cinematic video. You're going to have it professionally staged. You might be that I sold one that closed in January. I paid for the house cleaner. I paid for the landscaper. I paid for the staging. I paid for the carpet cleaner. I paid for I met the movers. My team and I, so I have 2 of my daughters working and my husband, we spent over 100 hours ourselves preparing the house for market. Just ourselves. We packed boxes, 110 degrees. We're loading a U-Haul. We're packing all the crap. I'm cleaning disgusting toilets that were the worst thing ever. They lived in that house for 25 years. It sold for 3.4 million. We started at 4.4. I've never worked so freaking hard for a listing in my entire life. I told them 4 million. They wanted 4.4. We ended up selling 6 months later after 2 failed sales for 3.4 million. We worked our freaking tail off, right? Beautiful home. Needed about 500,000 updates. But the deal is you gradually work your way up areas. So right now you're at 150. Is there a neighborhood around you that's 250 or 350?
Yeah, no. It's one of those things where like I gotta, in a sense, go drive to it. Cause like in my neck of the it ain't too much up here. So like my marketing is set up to be in all those neighborhoods. So there's gonna be a lot of things that are going on. Like when the leads are coming in, it's gonna be in those neighborhoods where I want to be at. So like you said, you wouldn't market somewhere where you wouldn't live. That's basically how I got it set up. It's just those conversations those are quote unquote different people. Those are different conversations that you're supposed to be having.
Everybody puts their pants on the same way every single day. So some of the hardest transactions I have are the lower price points. Some of the easier transactions I have are the higher price points. You get paid the same regardless. Well, you get paid differently, but the work's the same. Okay. Now my marketing's a little bit nicer, obviously, but like, so if you were to look at my general marketing, like every house is going to have a 2-sided full bleed heavy cardstock flyer. If you're in a market that doesn't do flyers, because it's not because you want them to call your listing sign, because no one's calling your listing sign. They're not calling. It's because you're usually cheap and you don't want to have to worry about filling the flyer box. It's typically, we don't want to have to drive there to do it. It is the best advertising. I've gotten so many listings over the years by people pulling my flyer. They pull the neighbors, the other agent's flyer, and it's paper, like on a piece of paper, cardstock. And mine's full bleed, heavy cardstock, or it's a brochure. So if I'm coming out and I'm the only person in the neighborhood that has that $1 flyer that's a full brochure, bearprinting.com, BEAR printing.com, BEAR printing.com. You can get a brochure made for like under $1.20 a brochure. They're beautiful, full gloss, full bleed, all of that. You have to look the part. You have to, and I'm not saying dress that way. And if you can't afford a lot of nice fancy clothes, I shop at Marshall's. Like I have a $79 Costco wedding band still, because that's what we could afford when we got married. So like you don't have to go and have a Louis Vuitton everything or Chanel belt or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, either. I'm going to show up and I have my little $100 Coach bag, which I got on the Coach outlet, right? So I'm not bougie like that, but I'm relatable. I'm kind. I'm nice. I'm hardworking. I'm going to show up every single day and they're going to get me. They're not getting my assistant. They're going to talk to me. I'm going to do the negotiations. I'm going to be doing the conversations. I'm not passing them off to an assistant. They've got my cell phone. They can call me 7 days a week, 10 to whatever, like I'll answer, right? And so I would say at the higher end, the expectation of service is a little bit higher than at the lower end. But like my lower end listings, my 330 condo gets the benefit of my luxury. So you try to keep all of you, if you elevate your brand all together, it's not a big jump when you have to jump over to the luxury because you are already at that luxury level. Darius, which brokerage are you with currently?
EXP. I just moved over a couple like really this week.
Okay, good. Well, welcome to the family. So best decision I ever made. By the way, we have a great luxury marketing division. I would not say pay the $2,000 to join it right now, but you need to start looking at all of our marketing, expmarketingcenter.com. So people that are not at EXP, you guys can still go into expmarketingcenter.com and see our sharp pieces that are in there. And then you can rip off and duplicate. We're fine with that. We're all about that. But go to expmarketingcenter.com and look at the content, look at the collateral that we have. You do not want to put something out that diminishes your value or your brand ever. You're better off, if it's cheesy, don't send it out. You're better off sending out nothing at all than something that's done kind of half sandwich. Like you don't want it. So everything has to be at a high level. But I would say right now, Darius, and we can have this conversation again. And you can call me or whatever offline, whatever. But go from like 150 to 250 to 3. Like let's work on doubling from 150 to 300. And then take you from 300 to 500 and 500 to 800.
Step by step. I love that.
Yeah. Incremental.
That's awesome. Jean, okay. Isabel, I think she answered your question, right? Because you asked how big is your team.
So pretty much a solo agent. I have a daughter who's my buyer's agent. She'll sit some open houses for me. One daughter that does my transaction coordinating, and my husband puts together our marketing materials. And today I'm going to use all of their muscles to help me move furniture while I'm a director and moving furniture. So, So we have our own staging, that we take on. I probably spent about $300,000 over the last 8 years in staging. So I have like a whole warehouse. Part of the reason why I have this house is I have like 8-car garage at the end that's packed with staging. So I'm going to be working on moving my own staging today. So not that I recommend that, but in a tight environment where, sales are down and stuff, you do what you got to do. Any other questions from anybody?
There was one from Jean says, can you repeat one more time the type of card stock that you use for your flyers and what size are they?
Yeah. So everything's going to be either, if it's a lesser expensive listing in our market, it's probably 700 and below or 800 and below is probably just going to be a 2-sided full heavy card stock. It'll like probably a 110-pound paper, 100-pound paper. That's my phone number, you guys. If you guys need to text me any questions at any point, you're welcome to text me or call me. So it's like a heavy, when the paper makes noise, I don't have one. You want the paper to like kind of whip a little bit, so it needs to stand on its own. And then permaflyers. Bear Printing does permaflyers. So they're those acrylic flyers you can put on there and put your QR code so they can scan those. They're like $25. If no one else is doing that in your market, do that. Some agents do that in lieu of flyers. I do both.
Are you saying perma flyers?
Perma, PERMA flyer. It's acrylic. It's like 12 by 24. It has your pictures on your listing. It has your description. It has a place for your QR code. And you can get QR codes made. If you are at EXP, we have like flow code. You can have like free QR codes and different things. You can get QR codes. And then that QR code goes back to your listing and the other thing too with luxury, you can make its own website. It doesn't cost you anything really. You have your own website created, brand it, all of that. But that first luxury listing that you have, leverage it to the hilt. And even if it's a $500,000 or $800,000 listing, you're getting private. I don't care where it's at. If you have the QR codes too, great. I don't care where it's at. Leverage everything to the best of your ability. Have waters, have maybe a little Keurig coffee station, have cookies, have something for them to take with you, have great collateral so they have something that they can take with you. Even now with all the commission changes and the buyer's agency changes and things like that, it's going to be interesting how that plays out. None of us are thrilled. Obviously, we all are like, yeah, this is so awesome. Yeah, no. I'm not going to blow smoke up your backside. I was like annoyed, irritated. I'm like, I'm done quitting, going to work at Costco. So I was so irritated. I was just like, gosh, and like how long do we have to do this stuff? So, I'm like every other agent too. I'm just like, screw it. I don't need to make $1 million a year. I was perfectly happy making 40, but I had less stress. But I think having a buyer's guide. So at these appointments that you're at, you're going to have a listing guide and a buyer's guide, and you're going to do your value proposition. Value proposition looks basically the same for $1 million buyer as it does for a $200,000 buyer. Your work is the same, but you have to place yourself, you guys, in the situations to have the conversations. You're not just going to all of a sudden land $1 million listings. Very rarely. You've got to put yourself intentionally at an open house. You don't have to work Sundays, but you should be working at least 2 of the Saturdays. I think you should be doing 4 open houses a month. If you don't have high-end listings, you need to call the agents who are sick of sitting on high-end listings that aren't selling because rates are 7%. And you need to show up. I have a 1.825 about a contract last Friday because I sat an open house on Taps Island that had been on the market for 3 months. That was not my own listing because that brightly colored wall listing that I have was getting 0 traction. So I called the Windermere agent in my market, said, hey, this is Kim Fraser, blah, 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 blah. This is funny. This is Kim Fraser. I want to know if I can see your listing on Taps Island. He's like, why are you calling me to show my listing? Because he knows I'm a high volume agent. He's like, also, don't you work in Bellevue? So he's a Bellevue agent down here on Lake Taps. He's like, don't you live and work in Bellevue? I said, I own 4 houses on that street. I live on Taps. He's like, oh, cool. No problem. And then I gave him a couple tips like, hey, you have it listed in the wrong community. You have this. If you do a couple of changes, you're going to get more activity to your listing because it shouldn't be on the market. But I sat somebody else's listing 3 months on the market and picked up 2 buyers from it.
Okay, that's a really good tip. So did you hear she called an agent who has a competing listing against her own listing to do their open house to try to get more traffic into, because she wasn't getting traffic on her own open house.
And that price was 145 and mine was 22. So 145 in the wheelhouse. I'm like, that's going to get trash. It's on Taps Island. So I'm like, I'll go sit yours because I know I can get more activity there. We sat that listing 4 different times. Faith picked up 2 people, my assistant, and I picked up 2 people. And I got one in contract last week for 1.825 and my commission is 45,000 on it.
Wow.
So just, you know what I mean? So you have to put the work in. Is it critical to furnish at all? Okay, great listing. Spring homes empty, but have the wood floors and main rooms updated with new paint. So I would say, Mark, the other thing too is you don't have to pay for the staging. If you're an EXP agent, actually, I think even if you're not an EXP, you guys can use Curbio. Curbio can have the seller pay for the staging, cleaning, marketing, landscaping, all of that out of pocket. And I've used those on 3 of my multi-million-dollar listings where my client just didn't want to pull cash out. So a lot of times these people who are very wealthy have a lot of equity in the home, but they don't have a lot of accessible cash because they have it all invested. And they don't want to take money out of their bank accounts to put it into the home to fix it up. So you can leverage that. You might pay 10 or 15% more in contractor fees. Who cares? And then they can say, hey, we've got the service. And so both, boost it up to like all the things that you can get added in there that are at no cost to you. Hey, during the listing period, my home warranty company will cover anything that breaks or anything that's deficient during the listing period. Is there anything here that you think that we can have service that will help, get it repaired for you? Curbio, this is something we can do, but then you use their money. The other thing too is, I've paid for listings out of pocket, $5,000 in staging that didn't sell. And then I'm $5,000 out of pocket.
Yeah.
So the better thing is, you don't have the cash, say, I'll go ahead and you go ahead and pay for it. And we'll split the difference. Like if there is resistant, okay, I'll make you a deal. How about you cover half of it? I'll cover half of it and I will credit my half to you at closing. How does that work for you? And if it doesn't, great. I have a third option. You can do, 3 things, but don't offer your money up initially. I'm the queen of giving all my money away. I'm really good at it. I'm like, oh, it's fine. I'll give you that. Cost myself like $1 million over the years. But, I'm better at it now than I used to be because I work harder now than I used to. So I'm more protective of my money, but try getting them to pay for it. And then, some stagers will let you pay at closing, but if things are sitting for 6 months on market, no one wants their staging stuff in there for 6 months.
Yeah. I got this listed off of expired. It's a beautiful home in a great neighborhood, executive area, swimming pool. So I'm waiting for the swimming pool to open up. So I've had all the floors redone and beautiful maple and everything repainted with the modern colors. So I just didn't know to what point Curbio is I should look at them.
Curbio, C-U-R, you type it in here. Curbio.
Okay.
And then they can cover it. I would say, and what's your price point could be on that one, Mark?
Well, when it was originally listed at 1.1 and then they dropped the price. So now that I've done all these updates and made it more modern, I still think it's a 1.1.
Yeah. It wouldn't change the price necessarily.
They dropped it. That was their marketing. Because all the way along, I said, what are they doing? And he said, well, they put in an MLS. They were very uninformed at the time. I mean, obviously, it went all last summer without getting traction. And that was a live example of them going with the wrong realtor that didn't market.
Yeah. And a lot of agents are lazy. Most agents are lazy. So the other thing I would say too is you can do virtual staging. That'll cost you a couple $100. You could virtually stage a house. So then when they get there, you can put a listing homes virtually staged, but at least you give it to a company like Box Brownie. So Box Brownie, I could type them in here. Box Brownie will do virtual staging. There are other companies too, but that's the first one that comes to mind. But you can virtually stage it. So it's only a few $100 out of your pocket. I would not go with virtual staging their pocket. I'm like, I'm going to virtually stage your house and I want you to pay for it. No. So if you're going to do that, you virtually stage it yourself or have it pay for it. And I would say at a minimum, I would do living room, dining room, and master bedroom, primary suite. The secondary bedrooms are less. An office, that might cost you $1,500. But if you really want to show the difference of and if you're trying to build your expired canceled portfolio, it might be worth $1,500 to you for the first month. Or how I ended up with all the staging inventory is I went out and bought stuff because I'm like, I can use this neutral stuff for down the road. And then you just have stuff that you can plug and play in different listings. And after you got a couple of times, it pays for itself. But if you're going to be doing expired cancels, you want to be able to show these people did not get this executive house sold. And this is what it looked like with their credit marketing and pictures. And this is what it looks like with my services. We staged it. We elevated it. We had better marketing. We had cinematic video. We did Matterport. We did drone. We did all of this. This is everything that you're going to get from me at the same price you were paying them. What would you like to do?
Right. Awesome.
So hopefully that helps.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Thanks, Kim. Joy has a question, and we are so over time. Kim, I'm sorry, everyone.
Don't be sorry. I love this. This is awesome. Sorry for everybody that we're so over for you. You can, if you get sick of you guys can just hop off. Okay, so I virtually staged once and displayed those during open house. I think that's awesome. The other thing that you can do with that virtual staging, Joy, is if they have a television in the house still, or you can have it on your laptop, like you said, and have it rolling. But maybe they've left their big TV, plug in the little USB drive and have it on a rotation. Just have it rolling.
That's a great idea. I have a listing 2.2 and it's just, I listed at the wrong time. I'll say that. I think it's ever so slightly overpriced. And I listed in October and the market here just died. So it's stale now. And my listing expires April 19th.
So
I need it sold, and
are you in good communication? Or how's your relationship with your clients?
It's a little strained right now. They don't want to do any more open houses. They
live in it?
Yeah, they live in it. And I'm noticing, though, that I'm getting good traction at the open houses. The last one I did, I had 2 agents reach out on behalf of their clients after.
Good.
So I'm feeling that in this market, the open houses are, what we need.
As we enter this market.
Yeah, I think buyers are younger and they want to come look. I think we'd interact.
Absolutely. Well, and you're going to get more looky-loos too, especially in July when the new buyer agency agreement comes, because people are not going to they're not going to feel comfortable. I think you're going to see a big adjustment like on Zillow and things like that. People are not going to want to go into a relationship with people that they just met. So you're going to see a lot of people that are going to be seeing these open houses. You're going to have a lot of unrepresented buyers coming to open houses too that may want to buy your listing. But I would tell your clients like, hey, we really need to pull out all stops. Spring market's here. We just came out of the November, December's tough. Unless you absolutely have to move. I don't care regardless of price point. You're not moving in November, December. You're really not. It's not a good time to move. So now the spring market's here. I think anytime after the Super Bowl, things really start to pick up a little bit. You're like, okay, we're getting a little momentum. I would tell them, and I would over communicate to the point where they're tired of hearing from me. This is what sold. This is what sold. Keeping them up to date. This is the neighbor's house. How do you think your house compares? Hey, I've got an idea. Why don't I hop in the car? Let's go have lunch. And we're going to go shopping. I want you guys to look at your house. I want to show you some other properties that we're competing with. And I want you to look at it with a critical eye. We are going to be critical. Every single listing, we're getting in the car. We're not looking at online because either houses are prettier in person or they're uglier in person. It's really true. Very seldom are they indicative of truly how the house looks. So they're either fabulous or they're awful. So we're going to get in the car. I want to take you to lunch or coffee. We could be breakfast. We're going to stop at Starbucks, get a coffee. We're going to head out. And I want to show you 3 to 5 houses that we're competing with and look at it really critically. Like, are we better or are we worse? How do we are we priced accordingly for today's market? Rates are 7%. So at 2.2 million, that payment is probably $15,000 a month.
Right.
What's that payment? Did you looked at it recently?
Yeah, it was
15, 16.
Yeah.
It's a big payment. So if you can only get 20, if your target is to get 28% DTI on mortgage at 15, 16,000 a month, how much does that person need to make? So they're making 180 a year, 180, 190 a year. Right. And they need to be making $600,000 a year. In the Vancouver market, where the buyer's making $500,000 to $600,000 a year. Even putting 20% down, that's still a $14,000 a month payment. Right. So showing them that our buyer pool is like a needle in a haystack, especially in the Vancouver market. And so are you in Vancouver? Are you in Camas or where are you?
The listing is in Battleground.
Okay. So that's a high price for Battleground.
It's a high price for Battleground. I'm actually really happy because one nearby came on the market at 2.7 recently.
Good.
So that's better.
Sell?
No, not yet.
So you're no longer the highest priced house in the
right, which I didn't want to be the highest price
in the city. No, right. It's kind of cool if you can get sold, but I would over communicate. I would over deliver on your marketing materials. If you don't have great photography, a virtual tour, or drone, or anything like that, I would step it up. Right.
I've had other agents call and ask me who does that stuff for me.
Okay, good.
I've had other agents ask me who does my flyers, who does my printing.
Good. That's a good compliment. Yeah, that's a good compliment.
I've never had to extend a listing. I've never had to re-sign.
Well,
Pardon me?
How long have you been an agent?
I've been an agent 5 years.
Okay, you're lucky because that was a different market.
Right.
I've had listings for 180 days that we extend. I've had listings for 365 days we've had to extend.
Yeah.
But this market's going to be different. And it's going to continue unless the economy starts to recover. I'm not going to sprinkle magic fairy dust on everybody. No. It's hard. Real estate's a freaking hard job. I work harder than I ever have for anybody else, but I get paid way more. I get paid more than a surgeon. It's ridiculous. But I work my tail off. I work 70, 80 hours a week sometimes. Sometimes I work 40, But the thing is, over communicate, over deliver, under promise, over deliver. Let them know this is the best activity we get on your listing is getting in front of buyers and getting into open house. And then I would say staging, as far as somebody asked me about what you bring, for swag, I don't bring anything branded to myself. Nobody wants a Kim Fraser freaking mug. I really don't. I mean, my mom maybe, but nobody else. Yeah. So, just, good print materials like a buyer's guide, a seller's guide, But I would over communicate. I would start talking about, hey, when we relist, we have two options. Do you think we should pull a house off the market for 60 days or reset? Anybody who's been watching it sees it's been on the market since October, so you're not tricking anybody. At the end of the day, market dictates price. You can ask whatever you want. It doesn't matter if it's a $500,000 house, an $800, $1 million. If you're overpriced, you're overpriced. And when rates are 7%, their payment's probably $5,000 a month on it, and they're asking someone to pay $15,000 or $16,000 a month. Who do you know, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, that currently makes between $500,000 and $700,000 a month in Southeastern Washington? Who do you know that we could market to that makes that kind of money? Because your buyer pool down there is probably 1% of the market that can afford that.
And our buyers come from California and Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Portland. Some come from Portland. But
you have to go out and do outside the box marketing to make sure the marketing you have is really good. Over communicate. And I always tell people market dictates price. I'll list it at 1.2. I think it's 1.1. I'll list it for 1.2. But remember, at the end of the day, I don't set the price. You don't set the price. The market sets the price.
Thank you. I appreciate when we relist using that verbiage. That's helpful.
But I would get them in the car and I would show them what their competition is.
Oh, lots and lots and lots of good tips there.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Awesome. Kim, this was amazing. Thank you for being here and spending some time with us today. I know it was really valuable for me. I'm sure it's really valuable for many other people. So thank you.
Absolutely. And if you guys want to follow me, it's Kim Fraser Realtor. You can follow me on Instagram or on Facebook. I think it's just Kim Fraser. But if you guys want to follow me, I'll follow you back. If you guys have questions at any point, please let me know. If you're EXP, too, reach out. But any of you guys can have access to Marketing Center. If you have a brokerage that doesn't have great collateral and you're trying to figure out what to do, just rip off and duplicate what we have. We're happy to help.
I love it. I also love all the Kim truth bombs.
So this is like the real me. Like it is what it is, and so, but be true to yourself and be authentic because it's not worth trying to be someone that you're not.
It's so true. It's so true. Okay, everyone. So next week we have yours truly. I am going to get right back into what I love so much, which is teaching how to talk to people. We're going to talk like how to talk to a high D. I recognize that I am a high D. Kim is a high D. Joy is a high D. There are a lot of high Ds around here, but not everybody is a high D. And so if you are intimidated by the high D personalities, which are us very high energy, very to the point people, I'm going to teach you how to talk to us next week because a lot of you probably have clients who are like that. I know people have clients who have clients like right now who are like that, and you don't know how to get the message across. And the thing you want to remember is whenever you're talking to your clients, you need to talk to them in words and a tone that they will understand and they will hear. So I'm going to talk to you about how to talk to high Ds next week. So I will see you all next week.
If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.